Dudes and dudettes, how are you guys? This is Chazzy and welcome back to What's the Damage, the good old WTD question mark here on my channel with a special guest appearance by the wind outside that you guys might hear sporadically in the background. It is a very windy day today, as it was yesterday and before yesterday and the day before that. Basically, I've gone a few days without recording any videos because of that. You know, there's way too much audio interference in the background. It's relatively silent today, but the wind might be a bit of a hindrance, you know, so let's just try to push through because I gotta get these vlogs done. Now here's the thing, guys. Today's video is kind of like a spiritual successor, let's say an indirect sequel of sorts to my last one, you know, which was playing NBA 2K22, and I played with the Detroit Pistons against the Indiana Pacers, you know, and I titled that video Malice at the Palace, and if you're a basketball fan, you know exactly where that comes from, and if you don't, well, you're gonna find out today. This video is going to be addressing the real Malice at the Palace that happened in 2004 between the two teams, you know, and it was actually, as the name suggests, right, it happened in the Palace in Auburn Hills, Michigan in the US, you know, and after the Brawl, man, the Associated Press called it the absolute worst brawl in NBA history, and honestly, it's really hard, you know, to disagree because the basketball isn't a sport where a lot of brawls happen, you know, different than football, for example, you know, American football, right, or, you know, any other sport like hockey, for example, you know, but whenever a brawl does happen, it can get pretty ugly, and this one was the ugliest of them all, man, you know. I'm gonna basically walk you guys through it, you know, and it's really hard, man, because I got some clips to show you guys too, you know, and it's gonna be hard because as an avid lover of basketball, of the game, you know, seeing something so despicable take place always breaks my heart, you know. I of course did not see it live, you know. I didn't watch basketball yet back in 04, but I can tell you guys a lot about what happened, all right? So the thing is that the Pacers were actually up, you know, and they eventually won the game because the refs called it off, right? And now the brawl itself happened when the Pacers were up 97-82, you know, in the final quarter, and you know there were 45.9 more seconds to go, and then the refs decided to just call it off, and you guys are gonna see why, you know. The brawl happened after a foul, you know, and Ben Wallace shoved Ron Artest, you know, and very slowly, gradually, all hell broke loose because the refs were reviewing the call to see if it was gonna be a foul on who, you know, and that's when it happened. But the thing is that this brawl here was instigated by several different players, you know. I don't think that just one person was responsible, but there was a fan who threw the now infamous cup, you know, at Ron Artest, and it was just sad, man. It was really freaking sad, you know. And it's kind of weird because all these years later, when you watch interviews of the players involved, you see that they really truly regretted what happened, you know. And I think that some of them had a very hard time getting over it, man, you know. There is this thing on Netflix called Untold. I'm going to leave a link here to the trailer. You guys can watch it on YouTube, you know, Untold, Malice at the Palace. I watched it recently on Netflix, and it was actually very impactful, you know, because the players came on to give interviews about it, you know, and say what happened, and it was just ultimately saddening. It was really heartbreaking and gut-wrenching, you know. I really liked it. It's an hour-long special. I definitely recommend it, and that game will never be forgotten, even more so by the 22,076 people in attendance, you know. That was definitely traumatizing for the kids in the audience, you know, and all these goddamn motorcycle bastards in the background. Every single goddamn video now. Anyway, after this, the NBA went on to suspend 9 players for a total of 146 games, which led to them losing a combined $11 million in salary. 5 of them were charged for assault, you know, and actually had to serve a year in probation and do community service, you know. There were some fans who were charged for assault as well, you know, and they were actually banned from attending games for life, you know. That was really painful because you could never ever see the Detroit Pistons play in their home territory, home turf, you know, ever for the rest of your life, which honestly seems a little rash in my opinion, but it's gotta be so painful, man. And this actually led to the NBA to, you know, increase security between players and fans and also limit the sale of alcohol at games, which was actually very justified. A little bit of background on the actual game itself, you know. So these two teams had not met since the previous season's Eastern Conference Finals, you know, and The Pistons actually won that, you know, in 6 games en route to their first NBA title since, you know, back in the Bad Boys era, you know, of the 80s and 90s. They were coming off a 2-game winning streak, you know, and they actually held a 6-2 record, while on the other hand, the Pistons, who were the defending champions, went into the season 4-3, right, in the series. So, geez, freaking fly, man. So this game was actually very heavily dominated by defense, so it had a few rough plays here and there, you know. The Pacers got off to a pretty quick start, you know. They had a 20-point lead with 7 minutes to go before halftime, and then actually the Pistons managed to cut into the lead, and they were trailing by 16 at halftime. And then they opened the third quarter with a 9-2 run, but the Pacers actually ended it with the buzzer-beating 3-pointer, you know, and also a layup from Jamal Tinsley, and that was heading into the final quarter before the brawl took place, right? So then 2 other players, you know, started the last quarter with consecutive 3-point field goals, and the Pistons actually managed to cut into the lead, you know. And unfortunately, Steven Jackson scored back-to-back field goals that actually put the lead back to 93-79, you know, for the Pacers. And at this point, there were 3 minutes and 52 seconds remaining, so still had quite a while to go. It pretty much put the Pistons away to that point there, you know. But even though the game was pretty lopsided there towards the end, a lot of key players were still there on the court playing, you know. So the Pacers were leading it by 24 points, so it seemed like they were gonna get away with it, you know. There was actually a lot of it was because of Ron Artest, who scored 17 points, you know, in the first quarter, and then Jermaine O'Neal had a double-double, you know, 20 points, 13 rebounds, you know. He was actually playing pretty well. And eventually, oh, by the way, Tinsley actually had 13 points and also 8 assists and 8 steals, so they were actually pretty balanced there in that side. Hamilton led the Pistons with 20 points, you know, and then Rasheed Wallace and Ben Wallace each had a double-double. But that's just some of the stat lines there to show you guys that the game was actually going pretty well, you know. It was going pretty okay. It was just a regular basketball game like any other, but unfortunately, the dreaded 45.9 seconds remaining is where everything just went down. You know, 97-82, the Pacers were leading, you know, and that's when Ben Wallace was fouled from behind by Ron Artest, you know, who actually slapped him in the back of the head while he was trying to go for the layup. And then Ben Wallace actually turned around and shoved him in the face with both of his hands, you know, apparently because Ron Artest provoked him, saying he was going to get hit or something, you know, but that hasn't been proven yet as far as I know. So both players from both teams quickly got in the middle of them, you know. They tried to break it up before something bad happened, you know. They tried to keep them separated, you know, and initially nobody was really concerned because brawls do happen in the NBA, but they tend to last just a few seconds, you know. The refs always cool it down, you know, so it just goes away quickly, you know. And then the referees were actually discussing fouls and ejections before the game would resume, you know, and people were expressing that Ben Wallace would have been ejected because he shoved Ron, but if he was ejected, he would actually have to walk past the Pistons bench, which might have provoked something worse, you know. It was really tough on them in that aspect there. But anyway, so oh boy, right as this was happening, Ron actually decided to lay on the referee's table, not because he was provoking anybody, but because he was following advice given to him of a way to calm down. He just found a place to lay down and chill and breathe and try to find his happy place, you know, so he would chill. Ben Wallace actually threw a towel at him at this point, and then he actually got up, you know, but they calmed him down, told him to just chill there, you know. That was kind of like already igniting a spark, you know. And then it's actually funny because Reggie Miller, who was actually playing with the Pacers at that point, you know, he was really going for really wanting that championship there. Unfortunately, he actually described the next moment as happening in slow motion. He sees a cup, you know, flying from the stands very slowly in the direction of Ron Artest, which hits him in the chest. Immediately, the guy gets up and just jumps into the spectator stand looking for the guy who did it. Unfortunately, he actually went to the wrong guy. We would eventually find out that the guy who threw it was actually John Green, who you can see in the clip he was wearing a blue shirt. But unfortunately, he actually went up to this guy called Michael Ryan, and he mistaked him for the guy who threw the cup. He even asked him, "Did you do it?" You know, and he said, "No, man, no, it wasn't me." But at that point, it was already too late. Ron started wailing on the guy, like smacking and punching him, you know, just giving it to him, whooping his ass, you know. And at that point, all hell broke loose, man. Other fans were coming in, players were going into the stands, you know, referees, everybody was trying to break it up. Other fans got involved, other players came and hit other fans as well. It literally turned into a brawl in a matter of seconds, you know. And they would later go on to say I believe it was the ESPN broadcasters, that as bad as it looked on television, it was at least 20 times worse in real life, you know? It was freaking crazy, man. Before I get into more detail, just that initial moment there, I'm gonna show you guys here in this clip.
The Pacers have played a very intelligent game tonight.
Then Wallace is fouled, and Wallace did. Oh, Wallace right at our chest. This has potential to be serious if they don't get between. Wallace upset. Players trying to hold each other off. Steven Jackson and Rasheed Wallace trying to be peacemakers. Now Jackson yelling. Wallace still going. You need the coaches in there to get him away. Jackson challenging Derek Coleman. Somebody should just get Jackson out of quickly as possible. The problem is, if Wallace is ejected, I'm not sure. He'd have to walk past the Pacer bench to go. Now Artest has jumped over the scorer's table and is trying to get down to the bench. Artest is in the stands. Oh, this is awful. Fans are getting involved. Steven Jackson's in the fans. Rasheed Wallace going into the stands. The security trying to somehow restore order. Fans and players are going at it, and the players trying to help each other out. This is a disgrace.
It was tough, man. It was tough. Easily one of the most despicable moments in sports history, basketball or otherwise, you know. Reiterating what I said earlier about the ESPN analyst, it was actually Jermaine O'Neal who said that it was 20 times worse in person than it was on TV, you know. And a fan started to throw things, you know, food and drinks and other objects. There was this one guy who even threw a damn chair at Jermaine, you know. It was freaking crazy, man. And then this other fan stormed, you know, the court when Ron was walking down, you know. He punched him in the face, you know. And then Jermaine came over. He came running to try to protect Ron and punch another guy in the face, but he actually slipped in liquid, so the punch didn't connect completely, you know. That punch might have actually killed the fan, man, because Jermaine was a freaking monster coming in to hit the guy with all he had, you know. And a lot of people tried to come in and separate them, you know, other players, you know. Reggie Miller was actually there, but in a suit because he wasn't playing, you know, so he tried to get in the middle of it and protect his players, you know. And there were also a radio analyst, you know, everybody was trying to come onto the court, you know. There were 3 police officers on the scene, but unfortunately they weren't prepared for what was going on, you know. They weren't prepared to handle so many people, so the police were called and very quickly swarmed the arena when they got there, you know. And it was really freaking crazy, man. You know, there were just a lot of different melee brawls breaking out, you know, and a lot of witnesses saying things that I'm pulling here directly from the source, you know. A lot of other fans, like everybody was overwhelming the security personnel basically, you know, because nobody was counting on the masses of fans getting involved. And even the Pacers coach said that he felt like he was fighting for his life. He really felt like he was gonna die, you know. He tried to try to stop a certain player from going to the stands, but he just like went through him like butter. It was really hard to hold these guys, especially the Pacers players, you know. Even David Stern, who was watching the game on television, said a curse word, you know, so it was crazy, man. And also, I'm trying to pull up here from the source. There was this other thing, you know. The referees did, of course, end the game there because there was no way to keep playing after that, you know. So the Pacers were given the victory. So the game ended 97-82. And that's when things started to get worse, man, you know, because once the players were trying to go back into their arena, you could see the footage of the fans right there in the stand, you know, throwing all of the stuff at them, you know, a lot of popcorn and their drinks and stuff, you know. There was just like an avalanche of items being thrown on the players, and it was really tough looking at that scene. When they got to the locker room, Ron seemed to be out of himself, you know. He even asked, are we gonna get in trouble, you know, like he had no idea what he had just done, you know. And Jackson actually replied, are you serious, bro? Like, are you for real? Trouble? We'll be lucky if we still have a freaking job after this, you know. So yeah, man, it was really, he really wasn't in his right mind asking that question there. So the police actually, oh, by the way, a total of 9 spectators were injured in that whole thing, you know, and 2 were taken to the hospital. When the police officers actually came in, you know, they started to handcuff anybody who refused to leave the arena. So it was pretty crazy, man. People, they were begging people to leave because it was just getting out of control, and it was a very hard moment to take in. It was really, really tough, you know, and Yeah, when the police actually arrived, they went to the locker room to make arrests, you know, but the team actually rushed some of the players like Ron to the bus, and I think Jermaine said, nope, I'm not going, you're not going to take me anywhere, just call my lawyer, I'm going to get on the bus and get out of here, okay? So it was really crazy, man, you know, the police were involved heavily in this thing, you know, and here's reading directly from the source here. The police eventually decided to protect the Pacers as they left the game and delayed the decisions about the criminal charges, you know, and make an arrest until after reviewing videos of the incident, you know. But by the time that the team actually left the arena, there were dozens of police cruisers, you know, stationed in the parking lot and lining the surrounding roads. So, and we all knew what was gonna happen. We all knew that the bomb had gone off, you know, and there was really no way back from this. Stop giving me notifications about things. What are you saying? So, like I said before, there were players who were charged, you know, and I'm going to read for you guys what I consider to be the 3 worst ones here, you know, which are the most expensive ones and the most amount of games suspended, you know. Starting with Ron Artest, you know, in the Pacers, he actually was suspended for the remainder of the season, you know, 86 games in total. That were 73 in the regular season and 13 playoff games, and he was charged a total of $4,997,500, you know, in fines. And then, of course, there was Stephen Jackson, also in the Pacers, you know, and he actually faced legal consequences, you know, and other players faced similar ones, you know, but there was also a year probation, you know, on top of him being suspended for 30 games and being fined $1,750,000, you know. And then later we have Jermaine O'Neal, and he was originally suspended for 15 games, but it was actually, originally 25 games, you know, but it was reduced on appeal to 15 after that, but he was still charged $4,115,000, you know. So yeah, and all of them had to do community service, you know, probation, you know, so it was really tough. And this was actually announced by the NBA. I do believe it was David Stern who did it, you know. And then what else can I find here? They described all of these things as different, you know, and okay, the suspension, what else? And actually that's it. That's actually it, you know, that's all I wanted to say. And before I continue, I'm actually going to show you guys here I'm going to show you guys the clip, the actual live footage of David Stern announcing the suspension in the NBA. Just bear with me here because the quality is going to be a little crappy, you know, but this is the best that I could find. So yeah, here it is.
Indiana's Ron Artest has been suspended for the remainder of the season. Indiana's Stephen Jackson has been suspended for 30 games. Indiana's Jermaine O'Neal has been suspended for 25 games. Indiana's Anthony Johnson has been suspended for 5 games. Detroit's Ben Wallace has been suspended for 6 games. Detroit's Eldon Campbell and Derek Coleman and Chauncey Billups have each been suspended for 1 game for leaving the bench during an on-court altercation. And Indiana's Reggie Miller has been suspended for 1 game for leaving the bench during an on-court altercation.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I would go on to say that it's pretty well deserved, although maybe they exaggerated a little bit, you know, but I mean, dude, 46% of people surveyed believe that the fans were responsible for this, you know, and if you really stop to think about it, that is kind of the case because it was a fan who threw a drink at Artest in the first place, you know. If that drink hadn't been thrown, then maybe things would have played out differently, you know, but Ron Artest was a ticking time bomb, you know. I mean, he would later go on to change his name to Meta World Peace, you know, but really doesn't make any sense. When he played for the Lakers, he actually elbowed this other guy in the face really hard, you know, so it just doesn't make a lot of sense, you know. But the aftermath actually led the Pacers fans to call their own players thugs, you know, and others were calling them a bunch of punks, and everybody was criticizing them here and there, you know, that Stephen A. Smith said that they should have been ashamed of themselves and some of the fans should also be arrested as far as he was concerned, you know, and I do think that better arrests should have been made, you know. John Green eventually came out in public to say that he was the one responsible, you know. I do believe he also faced a lot of backlash, but I don't remember if he was banned, you know, completely. And You know, other commentators believe that Ron Artest and other players involved were to blame, but if you guys see the Untold documentary on Netflix, you're going to see the players giving interviews and saying that they were just looking out for their brothers, you know. They don't regret it because they went to help their teammate, you know, and that there was like a very strong camaraderie there with the players, you know. And eventually, unfortunately, well, there were also some reforms, like I said before, but I'm going to give you guys more detail here, you know. So now there was much more increased protection for players and fans around the arenas, you know, while they continue to use existing safety procedures. And the league imposed new security guidelines the year after that in 2005 for all of the arenas, you know. And the new policies included a smaller size of alcohol purchases and a hard cap of 2 alcoholic beverages per purchase for an individual person, and a ban of alcohol sales until after the 3rd quarter. So in the 4th quarter, you cannot buy or even consume any more alcohol. And they were actually later putting at least 3 security guards there between the players and the fans, you know. And after the brawl, Ron Artest actually made the decision to leave the Pacers and just like pretty much abandon the sinking ship, you know. All the other players continued to stay there and play, and they kind of banned him as like a coward and a traitor, you know, because Jermaine O'Neal said that he went out of his way to protect Ron in that instance there. He lost money, he lost reputation, credibility, and then he just jumped ship and went to play for the Lakers, you know. And he actually won an NBA championship there with the Lakers, you know, which he seems to kind of have a sore feeling about. He seems bittersweet about it because he recognizes that he was a coward and he left his friends there in their time of need, you know. The Pacers did not win the championship there for Reggie Miller, and they were actually a top contender, man. If it wasn't for that brawl, I personally think they would have won that championship series there, you know. And it's really sad that that came about. Other players, they would go on to later go on to different teams, you know. They didn't stay in the Pacers for too long. Reggie, I believe, actually retired following that season, so his biggest regret was not winning that championship. And even though he wasn't directly part of the brawl, it did still deeply affect him, you know. So this will go down in history as probably the worst moment in NBA, man, or pretty much any sport, you know. So Artest eventually, he did return to the Pacers after the suspension, but then he left, you know. So I'm pretty sure that he regrets it to this day, as we saw in the documentary, you know. So continuing that there, you know, there were a lot of interviews over the years, players talking about it. I do believe they still give interviews today, you know. And 4 years after that, there was a similar incident that happened in the same arena between the Los Angeles Sparks and the Detroit Shock, you know, now known as the Dallas Wings. This is in the WNBA, and it was so similar that it was given the nickname the Malice at the Palace too, you know. So it's almost like a curse at this point, you know. So it's tough, man. It's really tough, you know. And watching the footage over and over again, it's almost like you can pinpoint exactly what went wrong, you know, because you could argue that Ben Wallace was the instigator because he did shove Artest in the first place, you know. He was suspended for 6 games and fined $400,000, but still, I don't know. It seems like he was the one who started it all. Maybe that shove was uncalled for, you know. But Ron Artest can really get in your head with his trash talking, so maybe it's justified in a way. But before I finish up, I'm gonna show you guys one more clip here, and it is an interview by Ron Artest many years later, you know, I believe on one of those fancy Tonight shows, giving his insight about the incident.
First, I took some of the part in it, but I didn't initiate the Malice in the Palace. It was a guy named John Green from Detroit who threw a bear on my face. That doesn't happen. I would never encourage anybody to let anybody throw something at you and don't do anything about it.
Have you seen that guy? You know his name. Have you seen him come across him since then?
Me and John, we were cool now. You know?
Are you serious?
Yeah, we speak, and we developed a little relationship over the years. That was a problem between a man and another man. Had nothing to do with TV or anything. It was a man that addressed this man in the wrong fashion, and I had to address that person. You know, you don't throw anything or hit me ever, you know, without, you know, a reaction.
Now, I personally think that Ron Artest's testimony in the Untold documentary on Netflix was the most impactful because he was the one who was most deeply affected by this, you can tell, because aside from serving the longest suspension and paying the most expensive fine, you know, nearly $5 million, I mean, dude, It was freaking crazy, man, because he actually explained what it was about, you know, what was going on through his head and how he deals with this kind of thing, you know. The pressure was just way too much for him and he just couldn't take it anymore. So in a way, I mean, it's not exactly hard to sympathize, but because like he had a lot of problems with depression, you know. I do believe there was, he actually went to a therapist to talk about it, you know, and he just couldn't get his mind right in that moment there. And he was one of those very similar to players like, who can I say, for example, maybe Larry Bird, you know, with the trash talking prowess, you know, or he might have been like that other guy who loved to brawl. Not exactly, not Shaq. I forgot the player's name. He was infamous for doing this. I forgot his name, but he was really good at, well, maybe saying that he's good at it is not the best turn of phrase there, but he was, he brawled very frequently. He was really tough, you know. It was hard to get this guy, you know. So Ron Artest was very similar. Maybe I'm talking about Ron himself and I'm just confusing him with himself. I don't know, but it's really hard. Like when you put yourself in a player's position, it becomes easier to understand, you know, because we will never, us regular folk will never know what it's like to play a professional basketball game, you know, how each quarter gets harder and harder, you know. And when you're a player who's in a playoff series, an elimination run, it's really, the pressure mounts on you and your teammates, you know. And Ron already was like, he already had a fuse that was waiting to be lit, and when it was, it just exploded, you know. So obviously he regrets his actions, you know, but it's still hard, man. It's still hard. He would eventually go on to change his name to Meta World Peace, like I said before, which was really ironic, you know. The stupidest name change ever, by the way. It doesn't make any sense at all. But, I mean, in the end, man, it all comes down to what you think. Who do you think actually is more responsible? The players or the fans? Let me know in the comments below what your opinions are, what you think about this brawl. If you think that it is indeed the worst brawl ever, it is unanimously considered to be the worst, but if you have any others that you think were just as bad or even worse, then let me know too, you know. I think I'm gonna wrap this up here because it's getting way too long. It's like nearly a half hour already of just this, and I didn't intend for it to get so long. So I'm gonna wrap it up here, guys, and that concludes this story arc, you know, playing the NBA game, playing now, recording this vlog here. So let me know in the comments below what you think, okay? If you happen to like this video, please go ahead and give it a like, and also subscribe to my channel because I release videos every single day. And while you're at it, might as well hit the notification bell as well to know exactly what time I upload, eh? And it's all good. This is Chazzy signing out for now, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Roll the outro screen with no brawls, please.